Welcome back, and in this one we're going to be doing the spectator system for the game, but I just want to quickly correct a mistake from the last video. Now, it's not a massive mistake, but we did make a feature where dropping a gun on the ground would remember how much ammo was in the gun. And you'll notice our give weapon event, when we give a weapon to the player, it will spawn in the weapon and then give it to them. But we're not doing anything here to remember how much ammo was in the gun. And so we're going to modify our give weapon function to instead take the amount of ammo that the weapon should have. Now, I'm trying to think about how we might want to do this. I think probably the best way is just to pass in the ammo as a parameter. So let's make two integers. And the first one is going to be the, the current ammo, and then the second one's going to be the current spare ammo. And what we can do is we can expose these values. So you remember I did that expose on spawn thing with my pickups? Well, we're going to do the same thing here with the weapon. Let's go into our weapon and blueprints, weapons, BP underscore weapon. And you can see that we have these values, ammo, and current spare ammo. Now, right now, these aren't settable on spawn. And if we make it settable on spawn, it's going to change the way that we handle ammo. So click on current ammo, expose on spawn, and instance editable, and do the same for the current spare ammo. And now when we spawn the weapon in, we can actually set these right away. And you'll notice if I come back in here, we may need to... Okay, what we'll do is we'll disconnect this. So hold Alt and disconnect that. And go ahead and just plug that weapon back in. And this time it should now expose these values. There you go. So you just have to reset the pin. It's a little bug in Unreal. It won't automatically do that for you. And then from there, you can go ahead and plug the current ammo in and the current spare ammo in, like that. And if I compile, I want to just search for give weapon. Here we go. So let's not give the player a weapon when they begin play. Or actually, why not? Let's do that. We'll give them a weapon. So now what we're doing is we're giving the player a weapon, but we're also allowing them to set the current ammo in the weapon and the current spare ammo in the weapon instead. Now, if we click on this one down here, inside of our server take weapon function, we're giving the player a weapon. What we want to do is we want to take the current weapon pickup and get the ammo in that pickup. And then we can feed that into current ammo. And also get current spare ammo and feed that in. So now the pickup will actually remember how much ammo was in the weapon. That's really important. And I'll explain why. So let's go into the game. And I'll show this off now. I have a pickup in the level for us to take. So let me shoot a couple of bullets. And I'm going to drop this on the ground. And when I pick my old gun back up, it should have 3 bullets in it. And it doesn't. Well, I tried. Okay, so it turns out my issue is related to the way that we're setting the ammo right now. So if we open up our BP weapon blueprint and take a look in the begin play event here, you can see that we're setting the ammo when we spawn the weapon in on begin play. The problem with this is that it's going to override any changes that we do to the ammo. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and delete current ammo and current spare ammo. And we're going to go ahead and just plug that right in like that instead. And we can go into the starting spare ammo and we can delete that as well from our variables list. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my weapons and I'm just going to set them up slightly differently to how we did before. So we're going to open up BP scoped rifle and BP assault rifle, and we're going to set up some of the values for these weapons now. And we're just doing it very slightly differently, not much differently at all. So I want the scoped rifle to have 5 in its clip, and when you spawn into the game, the current ammo, or the ammo that you're going to start with in your clip, is going to be 5 as well. So we want the player to start with a full magazine of ammo, so put 5 in. If you only wanted them to have 3 bullets in their magazine for whatever reason, you could do 3, but I'm doing 5. And then the current spare ammo, I'm going to set it in here to say 20. And for the assault rifle, we're going to do it slightly different. I'm going to say that the current ammo is going to be 30 and the clip size is going to be 30. And I'm going to say that you start with 120 spare bullets in your magazine. So now we're not doing any of the setting inside of this begin play, and it should fix our error. For some reason I don't have any bullets inside my weapon. Oh, that's because inside of our character we typed in 0, we didn't give them any ammo. But if I pick up this pickup on the ground, you can see I have 30 bullets out of 120. Now let me shoot a couple of bullets here. So you can see I have shot 3 bullets and I have 27 left in my mag. Let's go ahead and pick up this gun, and then we'll pick up the gun that we just had, and you can see it now remembers that we had 27 bullets left in our magazine, exactly as it should. The next thing I want to get started on is the spectator system, so that when you die, it actually shows up on your screen that you have died, and then you'll be spectating the person that killed you. Now, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to make a new character or pawn for the spectating. So we'll go into first person BP, we'll go into blueprints, and I have a little bit to explain here, but nothing too bad. So we're going to make a new blueprint class. Now, like I said, based on what you want to make, you can select different options. And you can see an actor is an object that exists in the world. We've covered that already. A pawn is an actor, but it can receive input. So just like a character, it can respond to things like me pressing the spacebar or something, similar to that. So we're going to click on pawn here, and we're going to make a spectator pawn. So I'm going to call this BR spectator pawn, like so. And now that I've made my spectator pawn, it's very, very simple to set up. All we're going to do is add a couple of very basic components. We're going to add a camera and drag that onto the root. And to prevent the camera going through walls, which is a really, really bad look, and it'll make your game look very low quality, we need to add a spring arm that the camera moves on. And what you can see here, this component tries to maintain its children at a fixed distance from the parent, but will retract the children if there is a collision. So basically, if we attach our camera to the spring arm, it will retract the camera back and make sure it doesn't go through walls and things. And we actually want the spring arm to be the root component like that. So you can see the spring arm exists, and then it's attached to the, or the camera is attached to the spring arm. And we want to use the pawn control rotation. And we'll also enable this feature called camera lag. It'll just make it look a little bit smoother and give it a nicer look. Now we're going to go into the event graph and actually script the spectator, and it's really, really easy to do. All we want to do is be able to look around, and that's it. The rest of it's going to be controlled elsewhere. So to handle this, we're going to use our inputs for turning. So just type in turn, and you can see there's an axis event called turn. And also type in look up. These are axis events that have been defined in the input menu, just like we defined the inputs for picking stuff up or shooting a gun, stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add controller your input. Plug that in, and then add controller pitch input here. So this is just adding input to the controller, and then the pawn is going to turn the camera based on the controller's rotation, as we have defined here by checking this use pawn control rotation box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spectator pawn, and I'm just going to drop it into the level, and we can test out that it works if we go here and type in possess. And just with this drop down, we're just going to select player 0, and that should allow us to actually check out the pawn. And you can see it works okay. We can basically look around, and that's about it. There's not a lot you can do in the spectator system. You'll notice that we still have a health bar. We're going to have to sort that out as well, but that's how the spectator is going to look. The only difference is the crosshair and stuff won't be on the screen, and instead you'll be following a player around. But that's a difference that we'll be getting into later on. So for now, we can go ahead and click on that spectator that we dragged into the level and just go ahead and delete that. So now we have a spectator working. The only thing we have to do is spawn it in when the player dies and allow them to control the spectator, and then we'll also make some really basic HUD as well. We're going to be dealing with some other systems in this lesson as well, such as the game mode, the game state, and the player state. If we right click, we're going to go ahead and make a new player state, go to Blueprints, Blueprint class, and type in the box here, all classes, type in player state, and select it, and then type in BR player state. This is a class that is responsible for holding information about our player's current state. And if we open up BR game mode, you'll want to select BR player state there. That's really important that we select that as well. So yeah, what this is going to store is information about the state of our player, such as how many kills does the player have so far in this game, what is the name of the player, and some other sort of, things of that nature. One other thing we're also going to need in this lesson is a new game state. So I explained earlier in another video that the game mode controls the rules for the game, basically. Well, the game state stores the current state of the game. So let's say, for example, you had a game mode called Team Deathmatch. The game mode would define all the rules for the Team Deathmatch, but the game state would store the current state of the Team Deathmatch using variables. So it might store how many kills one team has and how many kills the other team has. And then the game mode is different from that because it sort of just defines the rules, but it doesn't keep track of how many kills and things like that are currently happening. So think of the game state as the current state of the game, and the game mode is more just defining the rules of the game. To make a new game state, just go Blueprint class and then type in game state. And then click on that. And we're going to call it BR game state. Okay, now we need to write a lot of code. And there's really no way around this. We're dealing with a lot of systems, especially death, which is a fairly complex thing to handle in our game. So we're going to write quite a lot of code, and we'll start off in the controller. The controller is going to handle switching your position from your character over to the spectator pawn. Because what happens is, when we spawn into the game, our player controller is controlling our player. But when you die, we want to switch the player controller over to the spectator pawn. So to do this, we're going to make a new event, and we're going to make this a server function, because only the server can switch your position between pawns, because that's very gameplay important. So Unreal has it that you have to do it that way. So we're going to type begin spectating, and we need to make sure this is a run on server event and that the box with reliable is checked. And as an input, we're going to add a new parameter, and the parameter is going to be the person that killed us, and we'll type in killer. So this is the person that killed us, and the person that killed us is a BR character. Okay, so now this event has everything it needs to do what it needs to do. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have a killer. Because remember, sometimes the environment can actually kill us and not another player. So if we die from the environment, we're not going to want to do spectating. We only want to spectate the player that killed us if a player actually did kill us. Otherwise, we'll just be doing, we'll just go to the post-death screen or whatever we have. So let's make a function that will add the post-match HUD to the screen. We're going to right-click, make a new custom event, and we're going to call this add post-match screen. And this is going to be a run-on client, because the HUD, or the user interface, does not exist on the server. It only exists on our own machine, right? And oh, make sure it's reliable as well. And because of that, we're on the server right now, so to tell the client to put some HUD on the screen, we need to make sure it's run on client so that we can get back to the client. So if no one killed us, add post-match screen. And we'll fill this event in a little bit later on, but for now we've made it and it's there. The next thing we're going to do is add a variable called killed by. So just right click on this, promote it to a variable, and we're going to call it killed by. Just as we had our killed by in our BR character, we're also going to have the same thing in the BR controller. And under replication, we're going to select replicated. And we're going to go ahead and plug that in. And now we need to spawn the spectator into the game, and then we can start controlling it. So to spawn it in, we're going to create, or actually I think it's spawn actor BR spectator pawn. That's what we're spawning in. We're going to spawn it in where our player is. It doesn't matter where we spawn it anyway, but we'll just spawn it here. And the owner, drag out and put in self. And the instigator, we don't need to worry about filling that in. After we've spawned the pawn, we want to attach the spectator pawn to the character that killed us. To do that, we're going to drag out and type attach to actor. And because we're doing this all on the server, attach to actor is replicated. So if we attach something on the server, all the other players in the game will see this change as well, which is really handy. We don't have to do any replicating or rep notify stuff, any tricky stuff. It's all just happened in this one node that Unreal provides for us. And we want to attach our spectator to the person that killed us. So just plug in killed by. And you don't have to change anything apart from snap to target. You want it to snap to the target, otherwise it won't move. And from there, we are going to possess our pawn. So go ahead and drag out and type in possess. And I'm going to drag out from here. And I'm just going to use a reroute node just so we can more clearly see what's going on here. So once we've possessed our spectator pawn, the last thing to do is we want to show the spectating HUD, because we'll have some special user interface that we can only see when we are spectating. So let's go ahead and make a new event for that. So you can see we have add post-match screen. I'm going to add an event and add spectator screen. And this needs to be the same deal. Run on owning client, mark it as reliable. And so once we're in the spectator mode, then we can add the spectator screen. And we'll fill these in a little bit later. We'll make the HUD for them soon. But for now, that should handle getting the player spectating. Okay, so it's finally time to add the spectator system to our death logic. And this is real easy to do. We're going to start off in BR character, and we're going to open up the onRep killed by. This is the function that will execute when we are killed by someone. And you can see here right now, it'll turn off collision, it'll make our character ragdoll and some stuff like that. But the thing that we're missing right now is if we die, nothing really happens for us. It just does this stuff where it'll ragdoll us, but we don't see any of that. What we need is we need to put you into the spectator system, but we only want to do it if it's you that died. If someone else dies, we don't want to put you into the spectator system. We just want to make their character ragdoll. So to check if it's you that died, we're going to do the same thing we did before and say is locally controlled. And that is going to check if it's the local player that's died or if it's someone else that died. So we're going to use a branch here. And if it is us that died, we want to handle the local death. And we haven't made that event yet. We'll go back to the event graph and actually make something. So add a custom event and handle local death. Go back to killed by, and we're going to do that now. So handle local death. And then we can do the ragdoll stuff after that. If it's not us that's died, we can skip that step of handling the local death. Handle local death is just going to put our character into the spectator mode. So the way that we put our character into the spectator mode, you remember we put all of the spectating stuff in the player controller. So what we want to do is we want to get the player controller, and to do that you just simply say get controller. And actually there's another one, get player controller. And we're going to cast this to a BR player controller because we know that we have a BR player controller. you can see that this node, if we hover over it, just returns a standard player controller. So we need to use a cast to check if it's actually a BR one. Now it should be a BR player controller. We kind of know that it is, but we still have to check that anyway because by default this returns just a standard player controller. And once that's done, we can say begin spectating. Just drag out, type in begin spectating. Now for it to begin spectating, it actually needs to know who killed us. And the person that killed us is killed by. So if we hold control and drag killed by in and plug that in, now it's going to begin spectating the person that killed us using that event that we just made just before. One thing is, since we're spectating, we're no longer controlling our other player. So we don't want to see those ugly first-person arms anymore because we're not controlling the player, we're now controlling the spectator pawn. We want to see our own character ragdoll. So what we want to do is just flip the owner no-see around. So we'll hold control and drag the mesh in, and we'll hold control and drag the first-person arms in. And we're just going to set owner no-see to false and set owner no-see to true for the arms. And this way we will not see our own character's arms anymore. We'll just see the body. Now something bad's going to happen here if I actually go into the game and kill a player by taking a gun and then I'll kill a player. You can see that they're now spectating me, but it looks weird. We don't see a 3D view of their player. We actually see really close up. That's because the spring arm component is detecting a collision between the spring arm and the person you're spectating. We really don't want that to be the case. A quick workaround for this is to go to Edit, Project Settings, and we're going to add a new collision channel. So go to Collision, go to Trace Channels, and we're going to add a new trace channel, and I'm going to call this Ignore Character. And its default response is going to be to block things. So we'll select block and just get out of that now. And we're going to open up the BR character and go into the BR character's capsule component. And if we go to the collision section, we are going to go to custom and turn off ignore character. So make sure that that is set to ignore. And by setting it to ignore, it won't affect the spring arms collision. We'll also do it for the mesh here as well. So ignore. And let's do it for the first person arms as well. So go to collision presets, custom, ignore. And if we go back to our BR spectator pawn, under the probe channel, we're just going to select ignore character. And now let's try it out and we'll see if this actually works. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this person. I need to get a gun first. And now, cool, so you can see it's actually following the character. How awesome is that? So that's our spectator. It's now following the person that killed us. We still don't have any spectator HUD, and we'll add that in a second, but for now, this is a really good starting point. So if I go into split screen here, here's the killer's screen, the person that did the killing, and you'll see that on the screen where we died, we're actually following them around now, and we can see ourselves, our own dead character. So how awesome is that? That's actually pretty easy to add the spectator system. Now, there's a lot more polish that needs to go into this. We still need to add the spectator HUD and some things like that. You'll notice that the health bar is still on the screen even though we've died. So there are still some issues, but that is really awesome. It's pretty easy to get stuff like this set up nice and quickly in Blueprints. So let's go ahead and jump into the HUD and some of the other stuff. Okay, so let's start setting some of the game mode and game state stuff up. The problem is the spectator really depends on a bunch of stuff being made first. We'll go into the game state. I'm just going to add some real small features, nothing too big at this stage. And in the variables, we're going to add a variable called game over. So like I said, the game state will track the state of the game. What is currently happening in the game? You know, how many players are left alive, that sort of thing. And one of the things I need it to track is whether the game is over or not. Under replication, I'm going to use rep notify, and you'll see why we're using it later on, but that's all we need to do. I just want to create that now, just so it's out of the way. And we're going to open up the BR player controller and add the spectator screen. So the spectator screen is not going to be terribly difficult. We're going to do the same check that we did up here, where we check if it is the local player or not. That's really important. Whenever you're adding HUD, we really want to only be adding HUD if we are the local player. Very, very important. Now, with that out of the way, we can get the game state. So to get the game state, just type get game state. And now we can check the state of the game, but first we need to cast it into our BR game state, because this get game state just returns a normal game state, but we need to get our BR game state because we want to know whether the game is over or not, and you remember that's in our special BR game state blueprint. So we can get game over, and we're going to check if the game's over, because if the game is not over, we want to spectate. If the game is over, there's no point going into the spectator screen. So we're going to check that first. So if you're not, then we're going to remove all widgets. So if there's any UI on the screen, just remove it and then we'll put the spectator stuff up. And then we're going to do basically the exact same thing as we did up here. So let's see here, create widget. And we need to create the spectator widget, which we haven't made yet. So let's go into the UI and we'll right click user interface, widget blueprint, and we're going to do the same thing we did for the in-game. We'll call this widget blueprint spectator. Let's open up the spectator widget blueprint, and we'll add to this in a little bit, but we just want to make sure it's on the screen right now. So just select that. Self for the owning player. We're going to store this in a variable, so promote to variable, we'll call this spectator HUD, and we will put that in the widgets category. And then finally, we're going to add this to the viewport. So now it's on the screen, and that's pretty much all we need to do for the spectator stuff. Obviously, we want to make some HUD for the spectator, and yeah, so let's do that now. The first thing I'll do is I'll drag in a vertical box. I'm going to drag and drop that onto the canvas panel here, and I'll anchor it to the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to align it so that it's centered like that, and then we'll put it at a location of, say, -50. Oh, not the X position. We want the Y to be -50. So there we go. So now it's in a pretty good spot. Let's try a -100 actually. And for the size X, I'm going to go with a size of 700. Should be enough. And we'll make the size Y 100 as well. Okay. So this is a pretty good start. Now I'm going to add some text to the screen that just says spectating, just so that the player actually knows they're spectating. They can tell what's going on. And I'm going to click on this text and actually hit Control W to duplicate it. And we'll make sure that it is centered as well. So I'm going to call this spectated player name, and I'm going to make the I'm going to make this quite small, so I'll make this 12, and then I'll make this say spectating. In fact, let's do it the other way around. Let's make this one say spectating, and then this one can say spectated player name. So whoever we're spectating, their name is going to appear in here. And then I'm going to have one more button, which when clicked will exit the game. Because if we've been killed and we're spectating, we're going to want to be able to leave the game, right? Because some people don't want to spectate. They just want to go back to the lobby and find another game. So we're going to drag and drop in a button, and I'm going to anchor it to the corner of the screen here, position it to be 0, 0, and the alignment 1, 1. And we'll make it, I don't know, 200 by 50. Let's go 300. And I'm going to position it so it's -30. And then the position Y is going to be -30 as well. And we'll drag and drop some text onto this button. And I'm going to make the text black in color. And I'm just going to make this say exit game. And then we'll click on the button and rename it to exit game button. And for now, if you quit this game, if you click on the exit game button, we're just going to make it quit the game. So to quit the game, it's really easy. Just type quit game, and that will exit the game. And then specific player, we'll do self. Or get owning player. But this won't be here forever. Eventually, we'll make this send you back to the main menu. But we don't have a main menu yet, so we're just quitting the game. So that's a pretty good starting point. Let's also get the spectator player name. So to get the spectator player name, how are we going to do this? Click on bind, create binding. I think we're just going to do a binding. So we'll call this get spectated name text, and that should work for us. So the way this is going to work, the way to get the player's name is we're going to get the owning player, so get ourselves, and we're going to get access to our controller. So cast to BR character controller, because remember, this isn't a BR controller, this is just a standard controller. So we need to cast to make sure that we're accessing our own controller. And we want to get the person that killed us. You remember we're storing that in that killed by variable. And if you want to get the name of a player, that information is actually inside of their player state. So if you type get player state, a controller automatically has a player state, and to access it, we just get the player state. And inside of that, we can get the player name. Get player name is automatically going to be their Steam name. Once we integrate Steam into the project, this will be equal to their Steam name. And then I'm going to do a toText, and then we can just plug that right in like that. We also need to make sure that this information is all valid. So we'll valid check this, because that might give us some problems later if these don't appear to be valid for whatever reason. It probably won't happen, but just in case, we'll just make sure that these are valid. And in the case that they're not valid, we'll add a return node and just plug into that, like so. So if something goes wrong, just don't display any name at all. And in the editor, it may not actually tell you who you're spectating. That's just something, that's a UE4 error. The player name won't show up, but in the packaged game it will, as I'll show you later on once we get to the Steam part. But the Steam integration is not for quite a while, so yeah. Anyways, we should be able to try this out. I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and I'll shoot someone in the game. We'll have to take a gun first, so let's shoot. And you can see that the it didn't actually get added to the screen. The spectator HUD did not work that time. Also, something didn't work before, and I just want to make a correction. If you go into BR game mode, we need to be using our new game state. So where it says game state class, just make sure that you have BR game state selected. Otherwise, this will not work. So really make sure that that's selected, and you have everything, all of these settings the same way that I've set them here as well. Okay guys, this is really annoying, but it's an Unreal thing, and I need to explain something. So currently we're using game mode, and if we hover over it, you can see it says parent class game mode base. If you hover over BR game state, you'll notice it says game state and not game state base. So this sucks, and I'm sorry I have to do this, but it's just something we're going to have to do. We're going to have to delete BR game mode. So just delete it, get rid of it. We don't need that anymore. We need to make a new blueprint class, and instead of clicking game mode base, type in game mode down here and just select game mode. We don't want game mode base. Game mode base is a more bare bones thing, and it's not compatible with our game state. It's just an Unreal thing. If you're using game mode, it needs to be paired with game state, and if you're using game mode base, it needs to be paired with game state base. So it's just a technical thing. You don't really need to worry about it as a beginner, but just follow what I'm doing here and you shouldn't have any problems. So click on game mode. We're going to call this BR game mode, and go ahead and save that. Open up BR game mode, and then under the options here, choose BR game state for the game state class, choose BR player controller for the player controller class. Player state should be BR player state. Default pawn should be BR character, and for the HUD you can choose first person HUD as well. And now what we need to do is go to edit, project settings, maps and modes, and then use the new game mode we just made. So just select something and then just go BR game mode. We want it to use that new one that we just made. It's really annoying we have to do that, but yeah, unfortunately it's just how it is. And then in the world settings, so go to the world settings and make sure that it's also using our new BR game mode in here as well. Really important. It just has to be that way. And then everything should work. If I take a gun and I shoot someone, you can see that they're now spectating and the spectator HUD comes up on the screen. So there we go. There we have it. Spectating now works. How awesome is that? And let me show you how you can quit the game as well. If I click on exit game, it quits out of the game. So pretty cool, fairly basic for now. But yeah, that's the spectating. I know there's been a lot in this video. It's been very technical. I do apologize, but it's just kind of how it is in game development. So yeah, that's the spectator system, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I think we're going to do the plane in the next video as well. So when you fly into the Battle Royale game and you're on the plane and then you drop into the map, I think we'll be adding that in the next one. No guarantees, but anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.